So welcome back to another video on Node.js. So specifically on looking at sockets. So after I made yesterday and this couple to last day a review about Node.js and the fundamentals, the model systems, file input and output, web servers, Express, testing unit integration into E2E, scalability with clusters, database, uh, versioning, authentication and authorization plus security, continuous integration, continuous delivery, Node in productions using AWS, and concepts like on-premise and serverless, and why we choose the on-premise approach, where you have is using virtual machines or containers. So we rely on containers to deploy your code on a EC2 instance from Amazon Web Service. And then I look at GraphQL. Okay, so now after that, I'm looking is at sockets. Okay, particular on yeah, particularly on socket is how this is one of the exciting topic to myself and the fundamental of the internet. So we're going to imagine that we're going to build a chat application. So with all the things that we have learned so far. So sending a message, we can use a post, and if you want to read all of the message, use a get. But when uh, do we fetch data? Okay, so for example, when we send a message, we might receive a message from our friends immediately after that, or a couple hours later, or perhaps our friend is not excited to answer us, so we get that a couple days later, right? But in any case, the question remains: when do we ask for the server about message? And the answer lies on socket. So to answer the question when we need to fetch data, especially data that is outside of our control, that we didn't create, that is in its own life cycle, okay? Uh, data or data that might be in it is data that might be in their own life cycle. Exactly. So data that might be in their own life cycles, uh, that might be impossible to predict. So for example, like self-driving cars or trading or games, okay? But often we deal with this kind of situation on chat message, quite effectively, actually, with polling, where we send a get request so often in a period of time, and when that time has passed, we send a new get request in a loop essentially. So this approach might come with some issues. For example, like when do we know what is the right time to fetch data? Is there even the right period of time? Isn't is this it? Uh, this doesn't depend on how often we change the data on the backend, right? So what we can do with polling is just good enough, because when we saw a particular serial code where we add this 500 millisecond on the pull rate, right, and we're going to ask for data from our server, I saw that the important thing here is that this rate, okay, of 500 milliseconds, it not only add, so we don't only, so we're adding this 500 milliseconds to all updates. So for a chat app might be okay, but for real stuff, again, like things that I mentioned, self-driving car, which is data that is in their own life cycle that is impossible to predict, self-driving cars, trading, or games, okay, it's important to uh, know that this approach of pooling is not feasible for those scenarios. But for our chat use case, okay, might be okay. But consider this: we're making 2 requests per second, per minute, 120 requests, and this is just only for one user. So imagine that you have 10,000 users. So, or you need a powerful server or a different approach. So sockets comes here to the rescue. And sockets, they are just opening or a hollow that forms a holder for something. And in the context of data sockets, so they are openings in a computer system, and a computer is just a programmable machine that can perform logic and arithmetic operations automatically. And the system it includes is the hardware, the software, the OS is the main software, and it is peripheral. So if you have a desktop, there are like your monitor, keyboard, mouse, the speaker, right? So these data sockets they are opening in a computer system which you can connect to send data or to send or receive data. Okay, so and here I mentioned is which you can connect because it is a TCP socket, something I'm going to explain later that you need to connect before sending data, right? And uh, so dog socket, okay. So that's data socket. Okay, they are opening in a computer systems that uh, which you can connect to send and receive data. So these connections are the holders of the network computers. And by network computer is a set of computer sharing resource located on or provide network nodes, meaning they provide is either a redistribution point, such as border gateway protocol, and a routing protocol used to exchange routing data between different autonomous systems. Uh, and these autonomous systems is just is a collection of interconnected network servers, computers is an interconnected end device in a network that operate under a single admin domain, such as Google or Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Verizon, Akamai, Cloudflare, right? And this concept is something that is revolutionary, uh, not only from the business perspective, but also at scale, right? For example, ARPANET which is the founder. So ARPANET is the origin of the internet, okay, and it began as a defense research, right? But now it scaled to be used for civil purpose, right? Now that is one of the great example, okay, by analyzing, by understanding about this concept of socket, and especially the data socket. Again, data sockets are just opening in a computer system, and a computer is just a machine, a programmable machine that allows to perform logic and arithmetical operations. So you don't have to manually make logic or arithmetical computation. It that does all of that for you, and you do that fast and reliable most of the time. In a system, in a computer system, is these machines that include is their hardware, the software. The OS is the main software, and it is peripheral, right? Such as the keyboard, mouse, speaker, monitor, right? So this data or this connection, okay, or this data socket is a holder. This data socket, this data socket is a holder for this connection in network communication and in network computers. So this data socket is a holder. Is a holder of this is a holder. Okay, this data socket is a holder for this connection. You can think of this connection as you can think of this connection like throwing a rope, all right, and then tied to something. Another is the uh, yeah, a more real example. A more real example of use that. Um, so a connection, you might think of that as your close, uh, yeah, your close pal in a team, right, or in a classroom, your close classmate, right. So a connection. So your hand might be this opening. You can see your hand as this opening, okay. Uh, or a holder, you can see your hand as a holder for these connections in a computer network, in a human network, right? I think it's important to use all of this real life example, especially if you're going to explain that. You know, if you're going to explain that to someone else, yes, you must do that. You should, in fact, do that, right? So so um so yeah. So that's one definition, or this is the one way to look at this, right? When we talk about that this data socket is a holder for this connection in a computer network. And this computer network is just an array or a set of computers sharing resource located on or provided by network nodes. Okay, so a computer, yeah, you can play with that. So a computer network is a set of computers sharing resource, sharing resource. So hypermedia, or video, date, exactly. So an example of this, it might, or a great example of this is Netflix or Spotify, which are a set of computers providing or sharing a resource. In our case, sharing is series and movies. Okay, like Netflix or music or podcast in Spotify, right? So okay, yeah, just like okay, yeah, 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 yeah. hmm So I'm making all of this example, making all of this real life example because this is just an abstraction from this real life example. Okay. So again, so a socket is just an opening or a hollow that forms a holder of something. For example, a electric bulb socket or the eye socket, right? So in a data socket, it's just an opening in a computer system. A computer is a programmable machine that performs arithmetic and logic operations automatically, so you don't have to calculate that or spend hours making huge calculations. All of that has been taken care of you from this computer for these machines and computer systems. And you know what? You know what I know? A real example of this from saving you a lot of effort or a lot of time to uh, calculate or to use this or to dedicate time to know how to perform, for example, multiplications. All right, when you want to know how many seconds has passed in your life up to this moment, a pretty philosophical, fucked up question, by the way. You know what? It's like how much second has passed through until my birth, from my birth or since my birth to right now. It's like holy fuck. There has been a lot of fucking huge amount of seconds. Okay, and then translate that to days, and then translate that to weeks and months, and you see not only the numbers, but what is the hidden information of the number, or the metadata of this number. Okay, so instead of you calculate all these huge amount of uh, multiplications you need to do, so you delegate that to this computer, and now you can decide, hey, I spend a lot of my time doing fucking nothing. You know what? For example, right? So what I'm gonna do? What am I gonna do right now here? It's like, you know, that's one of the beauty. That's one of the beauty of this computer, where it can give you a broad sense of what the are you doing with your life. Okay, and that's one of the real life example of the use of computers, right? It's like, oh, okay, so what the fuck am I doing here with my life, man? Right? So this is a computer, and the computer system involved is the hardware and the software. The OS is the main, or the OS is the main software, and it is peripheral. Okay, device with that you can interact with this computer, with this machine. Okay, for example, monitor, keyboard, mouse, speakers, and a data socket is a holder for this connection. Is a holder for this connection. So you can imagine that this holder as when you grab the hand of your pal next to you or your doll next to you, right? Some of your classmate next to you, yeah, it might feel uncomfortable, and that's the idea. So feel uncomfortable, yeah, feel that that awkwardness. That is a connection, and your hand is a holder on this connection, this awkward fucking freaking connection, right now. Uh, that in a network computers in that form a network. Yeah, that's right. That form a network. Uh, yeah, that form a network, a human network, or in computers, a network computer. Okay? So a network computer is just a set of computers providing, it's a set of computers sharing resources located on or provide by network node. This Yeah, by providing a network node. Network node are either a redistribution point, such as border gateway protocol, which is a routing protocol used to exchange routing data between different autonomous systems. For example, an autonomous system is a collection of interconnected network. Yeah, this autonomous system is a collection of interconnected network that operate under a single domain. For example, you have Google, Facebook, Amazon, Verizon, Cloudflare. It can be a redistribution point, this network node, or a communication endpoint, a network address that identify a communication entity such as device, service, or application on a network. For example, computers, servers, router, switch, firewalls, gateway, and mobile device. So this communication of data is what the internet is based on. So why am I dedicating quite a lot of time to understand this concept and apply real life example? Because if you want to sell an idea, or if you want to sell slash make others to understand a particular idea, you need to listen, frame, and then take control. So what I'm doing here is just listen, okay, or talking, mention a story, frame it, okay, frame it so that the other person can understand the context of what you are talking about. Okay, so start with a story, frame it, and then you take control. Meaning is here I'm talking is of the data socket. Okay, here I'm talking about data sockets, which is an opening in a computer system that in which you can connect to send or receive data. So it's a holder of this connection in a computer network. And in network computers, it's just an array of computers or a series of computers that yeah, it's a series of computers sharing resource located on or provide by a network node. So they sharing resource located in a particular place or provide by a network node. Okay, so they sharing resource or provide resource by network node. And these network nodes either is a redistribution point, such as Border Gateway Protocol (BGP), that is a routing protocol used to exchange routing data between different autonomous systems. And autonomous systems is a set of an autonomous system is a collection of interconnected networks, okay, that operate under a single domain, such as Google or Facebook, Amazon, Verizon, Cloudflare, or a communication endpoint, a network address that identifies a communication entity, such as a device, service, or application on a network, okay? Such as a device, service, or an application on a network. So for example, computers, server, router, switch, firewalls, gateway, mobile device. So understanding this, okay, now can give you a more, okay, so understanding this can give you a broad sense of what are you doing, by the way, okay, of what are you doing here, and understand from the bigger picture, or to get a bigger picture of what data sockets are, where these come from, and how all of this operate in this vast field of computer software, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this actually was something time consuming. I feel drained about this uh, because this is a new concept and my mind hurts a little bit, right? Yeah, I'm also doing this psychological retrospective about what I feel and why I feel that, and what will be a and what will be mhm, and what will be a a possible what will be a possible definition of how I feel right now, right? After I listen or after I saw all of this content and apply and make example from the real world and see real life work example. So, for example, if you're going to explain that to someone else, right? How will you do that? Okay? For example, data socket. So you imagine a data socket is just no. So imagine that a data socket is so imagine no, a data socket is an opening in a computer system, and an opening you can imagine that as a door or window in your home, right? Or any opening, perhaps some duck hole or rag hole, any pipelines, is any entry point, right? Whether it's a pipeline or a window, door, okay? So a data socket represents an opening of that, where you can is exchange or that in the computer software, okay? This data socket uh, is an opening in a computer system which you can connect to send and receive data, right? So is a holder, because here, what I'm doing here is just trying to organize all of my data and to make this succinct as much as possible. So what is a data socket? You can imagine a socket as any of your entry point or any of your opening in your house, right? Whether it's window or doors. And it's funny because you might find that there are some others opening. Okay, so if someone actually dig a hole beneath your home, so that's another way. That's another opening, right? And that's what's most likely happening in any of these systems. So someone actually dig a hole miles and miles away from your home, and then he's able to get in there. And if you don't have your house secure, okay, and if you don't have, for example, perhaps concrete below your home, uh, that intruder can easily get in your house, right? So, in any case, sockets or a data socket is just an opening in a computer system. And the computer is a programmable machine that performs arithmetic and logic operations automatically. And a system, a computer system, it includes the hardware, the software. The OS is the main OS, and it is peripheral. So the fact that you can interact with the computer system, such as monitor, keyboard, mouse, speaker, laptops come with all of this built in, which is great. So a data socket is a holder for these connections in a network computer. So network computers is a set of computers sharing resource located on a particular place, or provide by network node. And by what I mean is provide by network node is provide by either a redistribution point, okay? So it can be a set of computer. Exactly. It can be. So what it means is that network node. A network node is either a redistribution point, such as border gateway protocol, that again is a device. A network node is either a redistribution point, such as a border gateway protocol, a routing protocol used to exchange routing data between different autonomous systems. And autonomous systems are a set of interconnected networks that operate under a single domain. So, for example, Google. Google has its internal server or a set of networks that, in order to communicate this autonomous system from the Google to Facebook, Verizon, Cloudflare, Amazon, you need to use a redistribution point, okay, a router that exchange routing data between these different autonomous systems, okay, or uh, a communicational endpoint, a network address that identify a network address that identify a communication entity. Okay, so a network address or a DNI, CI, passport ID, IBAN, all right, but it's a network address that identify a communication entity, such as a device, whether it's a mobile, laptop, desktop, or any of the IoT device, service, or applications on a network. So for example, computer, servers, router, switch, firewall, okay, is an application, firewall gateways, mobile device. And it's important now that I have this huge understanding, thanks to ChatGPT, to understand more broadly what we talk about is about what we mean about computer networks and uh, redistribution points and communication endpoints. Okay, so by looking at then what is the basic building block in the IP socket. So what are the basic building blocks in on the internet, which is the IP sockets, okay? And on top of that, you have is the datagram sockets, where uh, low latency is the most important factor. And then you have TCP sockets, where reliability and where reliability is the most important factor. They're connection based, meaning that you need to connect you need to connect before sending and receiving data, and it's also reliable, which means is you when you send a message, you know whether that message has been received or not. So, for example, when you use ping command, for example, or trace route as well. So no game. Okay. Um. Yep. Just like that. And on top of the TCP socket, we have is the WebSocket and HTTP. So WebSockets is a JavaScript feature that allows two-way communication between a user browsers and the server. And HTTP is a half duplex communication. So that's where the real power is in this two-way communication. So when I compare socket versus polling, where polling is using HTTP protocol to mimic the two-way communication, the main issue that is that we flood our server with unnecessary requests, whereas with socket we have an open channel between the browser and the web server that allows real-time communications. And by having this channel open, sockets allow these two these two ongoing communication to happen. And implementation details will look like this. Okay, when you have is the hello, so you emit an event with the data, right? And this is revolutionary. Okay, so the server can decide when to send data to the client without relying on the client making requests and asking for data. And this is, this is great. This is great when you don't need, uh, when this is great when you need that the server decide when to send data to the client without relying on the client. Yeah, without relying on the client making requests like pulling. So the server is responsible to keep the client up to date by sending data when needed. Mm. So the server is responsible to keep the client up to date by sending data when needed. So the client doesn't have to guess when to fetch data when it changes. And then I look at the web sockets. So we have seen how Socket changed the workflow chat model from the traditional HTTP model to WebSocket. Like with HTTP protocol, we have different implementation how to get data from the server in different API libraries. So for example, ASes or NoFetch. Okay, they are implementation of the HTTP protocol. Just like HTTP, WebSocket can have different implementations. Now remember, WebSocket is this protocol or this JavaScript features that allow two-way communication between the user browser and the server. So WebSockets can have different implementations in total, right? And the most common is WS, a Node.js WebSocket library. Okay. The only issue with this is that this model does not work in the browser. The client in the doc is a reference to the backend with the role of a client in the WebSocket communication. Browser client must use the native WebSocket object to make the same code work seamlessly on Node.js and the browser. You can use one of the many wrappers available on NPM. So now that you understand more about the fundamentals of the communication, especially on the internet, okay? Now we can look at the implementation of the WebSockets, right? Something that I am very familiar with, okay? Because I helped to implement a chat app using Socket.io, this event-driven two-way communication application between the browser and the server using Vue for that, okay, which is great. And let me just look at this. The socket. Looking at this.
Bring our library. And respond is the WS library, which provides the core functionality to use WebSockets in Node.js on the server side. With HTTP, we have the Axios library, or the NodeFetch library. Just like with HTTP, WebSockets can have different implementations in NPM libraries. The most common one in Node.js is the WS library, which provides the core functionality to use WebSockets in Node.js on the server side. And we can see, for example, that we can create a WebSocket server by requiring our library and responding to different events, like the open connection event or the message event. And if we scroll up here to the API docs, we can see that our server can respond to various different events. We can create new WebSockets. And at the bottom, we see here that this WebSocket server extends the event emitter class, the event emitter interface, which is where that emit function, which is so core to the WebSocket functionality, is coming from. When our WebSocket emits an event, it just sends it to whoever is listening on that WebSocket. So this is great. This is a good start. But if we scroll up here to the top and we think about how WebSockets are used, well, we need both a client and a server side to communicate to each other. So this WebSocket library fills the server side of that, but we can see this note here that the module does not work in the browser. And browser clients must use the native WebSocket object or another library. WebSocket emits. If we scroll up here to the top and we think about how WebSockets are used, well, we need both a client and a server side to communicate to each other. So this WebSocket library fills the server side of that, but we can see this note here that the module does not work in the browser. And browser clients must use the native WebSocket object or another library like the isomorphic WS library, which we can see here is not very popular and not as well maintained. So if we wanted to use WebSockets in the client in our browser, we would need to use this native WebSocket object. And we can see here that it similarly provides functionality to create a WebSocket and to add event listeners for different types of events, like the open or the message events. But we can also see that the interface, the API for this client-side WebSocket is slightly different than the one in the WebSockets, right? We have ws.on to add an event listener and ws.send here as an example, whereas on the client side, we're using this add event listener instead. And apart from the API being different, if a browser doesn't support this WebSocket protocol, our application will fail. We won't be able to receive messages in the browser. Well, what if there was one higher level, convenient library that works on both the front end and the back end and provides fallbacks in case the browser doesn't support the WebSocket protocol? Socket.io to the rescue. Socket.io is one of the most popular Node packages, and it makes it extremely easy to use WebSockets on both the front end and on the back end using the same interface. We'll dive into this in the next video. I'll see you then.
Okay. So, that'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye-bye.